My name is Maya Chen. I'm 28 years old, and I used to believe the worst things in life happen to other people. But on my wedding night, my husband Ethan Brooks died. And I didn't just lose him. I lost the version of the world where love means safety. Because 5 days later, when the police finally caught the truck driver who hit us, he said something that made my blood run cold. He wasn't just a driver. He was a man who killed for money. And the truth about that crash didn't just shock me, it tore my family apart from the inside. Before I tell you who really paid for my husband's death tap, like if you've ever trusted the wrong person, and tell me what country you're watching from, now let me take you back to the night everything ended. The wedding hall looked like a dream someone designed to sell happiness. Soft lights, white roses, music that felt warm in your chest. People laughed like nothing bad had ever touched them. And in the middle of it all, Ethan held my hands and looked at me like I was the only person in the world. "Are you happy?" he whispered. I nodded, trying not to cry. More than anything, we'd fought for this day, not because our relationship was messy, but because life always finds ways to test you. Long hours, money, stress, family expectations. Still, we kept choosing each other. Tonight felt like the reward. My parents were emotional. Ethan's parents couldn't stop smiling. His father, Richard, had that proud, steady look like he'd watched his son win at something that mattered. Ethan's mother, Diane, kept dabbing at the corners of her eyes, laughing through tears. Then my sister, Lena, walked toward me. Lena was 2 years older than me, always polished, always perfect, always the kind of person people described as strong. She hugged me and held on a little too long, like she wanted to prove something with the pressure of her arms. "I'm happy for you," she said softly. Her voice was sweet, but there was something underneath it, like a thread pulled too tight. Then she leaned closer and added, almost like a joke, "Enjoy it, while it lasts." I laughed, because who says something like that on a wedding day? But when I pulled back, her eyes didn't match her smile. It was a tiny moment, a nothing moment, the kind you only replay when it's too late. A few minutes later, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced down. The screen showed no caller ID. He stared at it for half a second, then flipped the phone face down and slid it into his pocket. "What was that?" I asked. He smiled like it didn't matter. "Spam call." Bad timing. He kissed my forehead and I let it go, because it was our wedding night, and who wants to be suspicious on a night that's supposed to be pure? After the ceremony, we took pictures, cut the cake, hugged friends until my cheeks hurt from smiling. At one point, Ethan leaned close and said, "Let's go. I want you all to myself now." I laughed. "We're not even out of the building." "I've waited long enough," he said, and his eyes made me believe the future was safe. We said our goodbyes and walked out into the night. The air was cool. The streets were quieter than usual, like the city itself had decided to give us space. We got into the car and I leaned my head against his shoulder. "Can you believe we're married?" I whispered. Ethan kissed my forehead. "I believed it since the day I met you." The road ahead looked smooth, empty, safe. Then I noticed something small. Ethan tapped his phone, opened maps, and turned the screen off fast. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Home," he said. "I mean, why are we taking this road? We always take the highway." He shrugged. "Highway's loud." I wanted quiet. But after that no-caller ID call, he checked the route twice, like he was making sure we were exactly where someone expected us to be. I remember thinking it was romantic. Now I know it was important. Because if someone wanted to hit us at the perfect moment, they'd need the right road and the right timing. Streetlights blurred past the windows. I was still glowing with that warm, stupid happiness you only feel when you think your life is about to begin. Then, I looked into the rearview mirror. A large vehicle, something tall and heavy, was behind us. A truck, maybe. Hard to tell from the lights. It stayed there. Same distance, same pace, for longer than it should have. "Do you think that truck is following us?" I asked, half joking. Ethan chuckled. "Maya, it's a road. People drive on roads." I rolled my eyes. Okay. He reached over and squeezed my hand. "Relax, I've got you." I believed him. I closed my eyes for just a second. Everything felt calm, safe, perfect. Then suddenly, a blast of headlights. A deafening horn. Ethan swore and yanked the steering wheel. The world spun, metal screamed, glass exploded like ice, and then impact so hard it felt like time broke in half. For one moment there was no sound at all. Just white light. Then pain rushed in like a flood. I tried to breathe and couldn't. I tasted blood. I heard someone, maybe me, making a small broken noise. Maya, Ethan's voice. There and then not there. And then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in the car. I wasn't on the road. I was under hospital lights, surrounded by machines that beeped like they were counting down to something. My throat was dry. My head felt full of smoke. I tried to move, and my body reminded me I wasn't in control anymore. A nurse noticed my eyes open and rushed over. "You're awake," she said. Easy. I tried to speak. My voice came out like sand. "Ethan," I whispered. "Where's Ethan?" The nurse hesitated. That hesitation hit harder than the crash. My heart started pounding too fast. Where is he? I tried again. The nurse's eyes flickered toward the door, and then my mother walked in. Her face was swollen from crying. My father followed behind her, but he couldn't look at me. He stared at the floor like it was the only thing holding him up. I already knew, but I couldn't accept it. Mom, I whispered. Where is he? She shook her head. And when she opened her mouth, no words came out. Only a sob. No, I said, even though nobody was arguing with me. No, he was right there. He was right there. My father finally looked up. His eyes were destroyed. Maya, he said softly. He didn't make it. I stared at him like he'd spoken in another language, because my brain refused to translate the meaning. Didn't make it, we're home mourning the honeymoon. Then a doctor came in and explained things calmly, professionally, like he was describing weather. Severe impact, internal injuries, instant death, instant. That word took away any fantasy that I could have saved him. Instant meant there was nothing I could have done. I turned my head on the pillow and stared at my left hand. My ring was still there, but it felt like a lie. Later, a nurse placed something on the table beside me. Ethan's watch. The glass face was cracked. There was a dark smear under the band. I stared at it for a long time because if I looked at it long enough, maybe my brain would finally understand my husband was gone. But understanding didn't come. Only numbness. The next days blurred together in slow motion. The doctors discharged me early because nothing was broken badly enough to keep me admitted, but every step still felt like my body was learning pain all over again. I walked like a stranger inside my own skin, and every time I heard a horn outside, my heart jumped like it wanted to escape my chest. People came to our apartment and brought food we didn't eat. They hugged me and said things like, "He's in a better place," and "At least you're alive and God has a plan." I wanted to scream. If God had a plan, it was cruel. At the funeral, the air smelled like white flowers and grief. Diane could barely stand. Richard didn't cry loudly. He cried in silence, jaw, tight, eyes red like he'd swallowed every emotion because he didn't trust the world to handle them. And Lena, my sister, played the role of supportive family perfectly. She held my hand. She told people I was strong. She brought me water. But there was one moment, just one, when she thought no one was watching. Someone said, "It's a horrible accident." And Lena exhaled. Not like she was in pain, like she was relieved. It was so small I almost ignored it, but my stomach tightened because relief doesn't belong at a funeral. That night, lying alone in a bed that still smelled like Ethan, I replayed the crash, the route we took, the truck behind us, the moment Ethan looked at maps and turned his phone off quickly. And that no-caller ID call at the reception suddenly didn't feel like spam anymore. I told myself I was spiraling. Grief makes you paranoid. Grief makes you see patterns that aren't there. But deep down, another thought started forming, ugly and sharp. What if it wasn't random? On the 4th day after the crash, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Miss Chen," a voice said. "This is Detective Carter. We need you to come in." My stomach dropped. "Is this about Ethan?" "Yes," he said. "We found inconsistencies. The crash may not be as simple as it looked." Not simple. That phrase turned my blood cold. I sat down because my legs stopped working. "What do you mean?" I whispered. "I can't explain fully over the phone," he said, "but I think you deserve to know the truth. The truth is supposed to help, but truth can also destroy what little you have left." I didn't sleep that night. My mind became a courtroom putting everyone on trial. First, I thought about Ethan's work. He wasn't a criminal, but he was successful. He handled contracts, negotiations, money. I remembered a man at the wedding reception, someone Ethan introduced as a business contact. The man shook Ethan's hand too tightly and smiled with no warmth. Later, I found an email thread on Ethan's laptop. A dispute. A settlement meeting. A phrase that made my stomach twist. "You'll regret this." I showed it to Detective Carter. He nodded like it was worth checking. For a few hours, my grief turned into anger, purpose, something that felt like oxygen. Then Carter called back. That man was at a conference out of state when the crash happened. Cameras, witnesses. We verified it. My first suspect collapsed. Over the next 24 hours, every lead opened just long enough to give me hope, then snapped shut like someone was steering me away from the real answer. Then I got a text from an unknown number. "He didn't love you. He deserved it." My hands started shaking. Only one person in my past talked like that, my ex. He'd been jealous and possessive, the kind of guy who smiled in public and punished you in private. I panicked. I called Carter. Within a day, they traced the message. Burner number. Public Wi-Fi. No real identity. Someone had wanted me to chase the wrong person. Someone had wanted the investigation to waste time. Then I heard a rumor online, drunk truck driver kills groom. People commented angry things. They demanded punishment. For one moment, I almost let myself believe it because drunk driving is random, and random is easier to accept than intentional. But deep inside, I knew random doesn't follow your route. Random doesn't show up at the perfect moment. On the 5th day after the crash, Detective Carter called again. "We caught him," he said. My breath caught. The truck driver. Yes. For a second, I felt something like relief. Like maybe I could finally stop drowning. Was he drunk? I asked. There was a pause. No, Carter said quietly. And Maya, you need to sit down for what comes next. I went to the station with my heart in my throat. The interrogation room smelled like stale air and cheap coffee. The driver sat behind glass, his hands cuffed. He looked calm, not scared. Not guilty in the way normal people are guilty. Just finished. Detective Carter said, "Tell us why you did it." The driver stared at the table. Silence. Then Carter leaned closer. "A man is dead because of you." The driver finally lifted his eyes and looked straight through us like we were nothing. "You think I'm just a driver?" he asked. My skin prickled. He smiled slightly. "I'm not just a driver." Carter's voice sharpened. "Then what are you?" The driver shrugged like it was boring. "A killer." The word hit me so hard I felt sick. Carter slammed his hand on the table. "Who hired you?" The driver leaned back. "This crash wasn't an accident," he said. "It was planned. Planned." My mind flashed back to Ethan's phone, the map screen, the chosen road, the truck behind us. The driver continued like he was reading a grocery list. I was given the route, the time, the exact point to hit. I was told to make sure he didn't survive. And if possible, you too. If possible, me too. I couldn't breathe. Because whoever ordered it wasn't just trying to take Ethan. They wanted to erase both of us. Carter asked name. The driver shook his head. I never met the real boss. My heart hammered. Then who did you meet? He hesitated for the first time. A contractor, he said. Middleman. I got instructions. I got paid. And the contractor's name Carter demanded. The driver smiled again. I don't know. He's gone now. That night Carter told me the contractor's number was dead. The email was fake. The bank account used for payment was opened under stolen identity. The next day they ran everything again, checked cameras near, likely drop points, pulled traffic footage, chased shadows, and it still came back like smoke. Day 6 felt longer than the whole year. And that's when the fear truly settled in. Because if the middleman was gone, the person who ordered Ethan's death was still out there, still free, still close enough to know our route, close enough to know our timing, close enough to smile at our wedding. I started locking my doors twice. I started checking behind me in parking lots. I started flinching when my phone buzzed. I started looking at the people I loved like they were strangers. Grief had turned into paranoia. And paranoia had turned into one question that wouldn't leave me alone. Who would want us both dead? A few days after the interrogation, Ethan's father Richard asked to see me. We sat in his living room, surrounded by photos of Ethan's childhood, smiles frozen in frames like cruelty. Richard didn't offer comforting words. He didn't tell me to be strong. He looked at me like a man who had already made a decision. I spoke to people, he said. People I asked. He nodded once. Connections. Investigators. Lawyers. I blinked. Richard. The police. The police do what they can. He cut in, and his voice was colder than anger. But this wasn't random. Someone paid for my son to die. I swallowed. And if someone paid, Richard continued, there's always a trail. Calls. Money. Meetings. Even if it's buried. My chest tightened. You think you can find it? Richard leaned forward. I can find enough to suspect, he said. But suspecting isn't convicting. I need the missing piece. The moment the person behind this slips. He opened a folder and showed me what he had. Not perfect proof. Not a neat bow. More like fragments, a partial call pattern that pointed to a burner phone, a suspicious transfer routed through accounts that didn't match a normal life, and a blurry camera still near a parking lot where someone met a man who matched. The contractor's build blurry enough that a defense lawyer could argue about angles and lighting. I took it to Carter, Richard said. He told me the same thing I already knew. Without a clean confession or a direct link, a good lawyer could punch holes. I felt my throat tighten. So what do we do? Richard's eyes didn't move. We trap. Trap who? I whispered. The person who thinks they got away with it, he said. We'll put pressure on them in a room full of witnesses, and we'll record everything legally. If they lie, if they react wrong, if they say one careless sentence, Carter will have what he needs. He paused, then said, we're going to hold a family meeting. A family meeting. The words sounded normal, harmless, but the way Richard said them made it feel like a sentence. If you're still here, you already know this isn't just a tragedy, it's a betrayal. Subscribe now because what happened in that family meeting proved something I never wanted to believe. Richard invited everyone to dinner. My parents, Diane, and Lena. My sister arrived wearing a calm smile like she was walking into a normal evening. She hugged me. I'm so worried about you, she whispered. Her perfume made my stomach turn. I watched her sit down like she belonged there. Richard served food nobody touched. The air felt thick like a storm waiting for permission to strike. Before anyone ate, Richard looked around the table and said calmly, I'm going to be direct. This conversation is being recorded. No tricks, no secrets. Just the truth. If anyone wants to leave, leave now. No one moved. Lena's smile stayed on, but her eyes sharpened. Then Richard spoke. I've been thinking, he said, voice steady. Maybe we're all torturing ourselves. Maybe the crash was just an accident. Lena's shoulders relaxed. Just slightly. Just enough. Richard saw it. He leaned back and sighed like he was tired. Yes. Maybe it was an accident. Lena nodded quickly. Of course it was, she said. These things happen. We can't. Richard raised one hand, silencing her. I said, maybe. Then he slid a paper across the table. A transfer, he said. 2 days before the crash. Lena's smile flickered. What is that? She asked too fast. Richard didn't answer. He placed another paper down. A phone call, he said. Burner number. 3 minutes long. The night before the wedding. Lena's fingers tightened around her glass. You're being ridiculous, she snapped. You're grieving. Richard's eyes didn't blink. Then he placed another page down, this one with a timestamp and a single line highlighted. And here Richard said quietly, is the reason I don't believe in coincidence. The highlighted line was a call window that matched the time of that no-caller ID ring at the reception. Richard turned to me. Maya, do you remember Ethan's phone buzzing at the reception? My stomach clenched. The no-caller ID call, I whispered. Richard nodded once. That wasn't spam, he said. Carter's team pulled a match from tower pings and partial records. The burner hit Ethan's phone in that same hour. Ethan answered long enough to receive route confirmation. My chest felt crushed. Ethan had been protecting me from fear, right up until the moment fear killed him. Lena's face went still. Richard watched her closely, then placed the final piece down. A printed photo. Grainy. A woman standing beside a man outside a parking lot. The man's face was partially hidden. The angle was bad. The lighting was worse. But the woman's face caught mid-turn was clear enough. Lena. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I'd vomit. No, I whispered. Lena's eyes widened. Then, unbelievably, she laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A cold laugh like the mask had finally become too heavy to hold. Richard's voice cut through the room like a blade. The person who gave the order, he said, slowly, is in this room. He looked straight at Lena, and Lena didn't even flinch anymore. She leaned back like she'd been waiting for this. You really went that far, she said to Richard, almost impressed. My mother gasped. My father stood up. Lena, what is he talking about? Lena looked at them and smiled. Not sweet, not loving sharp. What am I talking about? She repeated. I'm talking about how Maya always got everything. My ears rang. Lena's voice rose with years of poison. She was the favorite. The pretty one. The one everyone protected. I was the shadow. My mother shook her head. That's not true. Lena slammed her hand on the table. Don't lie, she hissed. You know it is. Every birthday. Every achievement. Every time I did something good, you asked why I wasn't like her. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was watching my sister become someone I didn't recognize and realizing maybe she'd been that person all along. And then, Ethan, Lena said, eyes gleaming. Perfect Ethan. Loyal Ethan. Rich family. Clean future. She turned to me. You didn't just marry him, Maya. You won. Again. My voice finally came out shaking. So you killed him. Lena tilted her head. I didn't kill him, she said lightly. I paid for it. The words stabbed deeper than anything. Ethan wasn't just dead. He was purchased. Richard stood up. His face was pale, but his voice was iron. You wanted my son dead. Lena shrugged. I wanted her life gone, she said, pointing at me like I was an object. Both of you. That was the moment it clicked. The crash wasn't about Ethan alone. It was about erasing me. About wiping the board clean so Lena could stop feeling like she lost. Diane made a sound, half scream, half sob. You monster, she whispered. Lena looked at her like she was bored. You're welcome, Lena said. Now you get to grieve like you deserve. And that's when the door opened. Detective Carter stepped in with 2 officers behind him. He held up his phone, screen-lit recording still running. Richard hadn't just said a dinner. He'd said a legally recorded confession. Lena's eyes widened for the first time. No, she said sharply. No, this is family. Carter's voice was calm and hard. Lena Chen, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and murder for hire. Cuffs clicked. Metal on skin. Lena finally looked scared. She turned to me, eyes wild. Maya, please. I stared back at her. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like her little sister. I felt like her consequence. The trial didn't happen overnight, but it moved faster than I expected. Within weeks, the pieces locked together. The driver's confession, the planned route and timing, the burner phone pattern, the transfers, the meeting footage, plus Lena's own recorded words at the dinner table. In court, Lena tried to cry. She tried to look fragile. She told the judge she'd been manipulated, that she was emotional, that she didn't mean for Ethan to die. But the prosecutor played the recorded confession, played Lena's own voice. I paid for it. They read the transfers. They showed the calls. They laid out the timeline like a spine. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an impulse. It was a purchase. Detective Carter testified about the driver, about the route confirmation, about how the no-caller ID moment at the reception wasn't random at all. It was a final instruction Ethan hid from me because he didn't want to ruin our wedding night. When the judge spoke the final sentence, life imprisonment, I should have felt victory. I should have felt relief, but I felt hollow, because no sentence brings back a man who died on his wedding night. No verdict rewinds time. Lena went to prison, but her punishment didn't stop at prison walls. Because the story spread and people love tragedy until it has a villain. Local news called her the bride's sister. Online threads called her worse. Her workplace released a short statement: employment terminated, effective immediately. Her friends disappeared. Photos got deleted. Messages got left unread. And the man she'd been dating, someone she once bragged would propose soon, vanished overnight. No goodbye. No explanation. Just silence. Even my parents changed. Not because they suddenly understood me, but because shame is heavier than love. They stopped saying her name in public. They stopped defending her. They visited once, and then they couldn't do it again. The stares in the parking lot. The whispers in the hallway. The realization that their daughter wasn't a mistake. She was a decision. In prison, Lena was surrounded by people who didn't care that she was smart or pretty or misunderstood. She was just another inmate. Outside prison, she became something worse. A story, a warning, a name people whispered with disgust. And the cruelest part wasn't me destroying her reputation. She destroyed it herself the moment she decided my life was something she could steal. Months later, I stood in front of Ethan's grave. The wind was cold. The sky was empty. I placed flowers down and whispered the truth I'd been carrying. She wanted my life. I swallowed. Now she doesn't even get her name. If this story taught you anything, let it be this. The worst betrayals don't always come from strangers. Sometimes they come from the people who hug you at your wedding and smile while they plan your funeral. If you want more revenge tales like this, stories where the truth finally drags monsters into the light, subscribe.